The Executive Office of the President has registered the Aliens.gov domain, a quiet but unmistakable step forward for a potential public portal for declassified UFO materials. Space Force infographic raises questions about flying triangles and flying rectangles photographed near MacDill Air Force Base in 2017. Chris Mellon, a former Pentagon official, said, "We have satellite imagery of craft that sure do not look like anything that we have built or constructed. More researchers are becoming interested in possible assassinations of UFO witnesses and who's running such dark programs." New trailer for S4, the Bob Lazar story. These stories and more on Exopolitics today, the week in review.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to the March 21st edition of Exopolitics Today, the week in review. Happy spring equinox. I hope you have a wonderful day. And we are going to be covering a range of very interesting developments over the last week concerning exopolitics. So I want to begin with something concerning a former Pentagon official, Chris Mellon, who was speculating about the UFO files President Trump and the Pentagon will officially release. That's related to President Trump couple of weeks ago promising that he would release UFO files and actually ordering the Pentagon to do it. And we had Pete Hegseth, the Pentagon chief, the Secretary of War, saying that the Pentagon is now working on. Now, Mellon says that we have satellite imagery of craft that sure don't look like anything that we have built or constructed. So I thought that was very interesting. That gives us a kind of like insight into what, as far as Chris Mellon is concerned and what he saw while he was serving in the Pentagon as a senior official, what we can expect. So I can imagine that what is going to be released by the Pentagon and also something that will eventually be kind of disseminated to the general public will be a lot of satellite imagery showing UFOs. Okay, so here is researchers are becoming very interested in possible assassinations of UFO witnesses and who's running such dark programs. And we can listen to a little bit of this testimony about what's been going on as far as UFO assassinations. So let me play this for you from the beginning.
Of the 40 people we did interview, I'd say about 10 to 12 of them had concerns about wet work, murders in the past, people going missing in their workplace. I certainly had, some disturbing things happen to me in my personal life from a physical intimidation perspective, which I reported to my agency's counterintelligence element when I was still in government. Obviously, I was never physically harmed, but I certainly saw signatures of what I thought was illicit extra-governmental activity as it related to intimidating me and some of my other colleagues. Just was very, very disturbing and upsetting information. So I don't have any personal knowledge of that kind of stuff, but I did talk to firsthand witnesses who had very high credentials that were government officials that did espouse that concern of illicit wet work and other physical intimidation type.
Okay, so there you have David Grush and others confirming that wet works have been used against UFO whistleblowers or witnesses, essentially people are being threatened, intimidated, or assassinated if they know too much and are talking about it. And there are various entities, both government and corporate, that are involved in these wet work operations. So that is something that I think really is noteworthy, because there is a whistleblower, an insider from 1991 called Derek Hennessy, or also known as Connor O'Ryan, and he was first interviewed by Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens, and that interview took place in 1991, but it was more than a decade before Colonel Stevens released that interview, because at first he thought it could have been disinformation. But eventually he felt that it was true and he was about to release it. He was then warned, given a phone call saying don't release it, but he did release it in 2001. And in 2009 it went up on YouTube. And it basically had the 6-hour testimony of a former CIA Navy SEAL assassin who was being ordered to basically kill anyone that was disseminating information that was deemed to be a violation or a threat to national security. And so UFO whistleblowers were deemed by those running these programs threats to national security. So they would get people like this Navy SEAL to go out and murder him. And he described what happened, some of the murders that he participated in, and how this assassination unit, people involved in wet works, would be arrested at the S4 facility at Area 51. So very significant testimony there, showing that the concerns of modern researchers and whistleblowers about wet works is very, very valid, and goes back, I mean, not just the 1990s, but even earlier than that. Right, so here is another tweet, and this is from Timothy Alberino, who talked about how Christian theologians at first conceived of angels as corporeal beings, but that over time this changed and they began to be seen more as incorporeal or spiritual beings. Now, the problem is that over time, this has led to angels and demons being seen as these spiritual entities that either help or terrorize humanity. But if we go back to the early depictions of angels and demons, they were depicted as physical corporeal beings. And that kind of like takes us directly into the extraterrestrial hypothesis that those angels or demons that are described in different biblical texts and even the Quran, that they in fact were extraterrestrials, that these were physical corporeal beings. Okay, so here is an article in the Liberation Times concerning the disappearance of General Neil McCaslin, which is being connected by a lot of researchers to classified UFO reverse engineering efforts at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is where he served. And he also was involved with Tom DeLonge's UFO Disclosure Initiative. So General McCaslin has disappeared, and people are trying to piece together exactly what happened to him, whether it's just a case of him being in retirement, getting lost on a mountain hike, or whether there was some more nefarious activity concerned. And I've already mentioned wet works, assassination of UFO witnesses, and General McCaslin would be someone that would be high on the list because of his knowledge of UFO reverse engineering efforts at Wright-Patterson. and the recent orders by President Trump to the Department of War to release all UFO files, all records concerning any evidence of extraterrestrial life. So General McCaslin, essentially, he is someone that knows where all the bodies are buried, and he could have told Trump if he was summoned to share what he knew as part of this Pentagon effort to release the truth about what's going on. So I imagine that there are quite a few generals, senior officials in the Pentagon who probably know a lot, and that there is a kind of effort by some to threaten them, especially if they participate with this White House initiative to reveal what the truth is about UFOs. All right, so here is Congressman Eric Burleson, who really is very courageous. I mean, here he is saying that he is not suicidal, and then this comes just days after revealing that he was warned not to contact certain people for information on UFOs. So let's listen to what he has to say.
Told that there were two names on a list of people that I was looking through and I was warned to not reach out to those individuals because they have the capabilities and would have no problem having someone like me killed.
Well, there you go. So there you have a sitting congressman who is very interested in UFOs, and he's been given leads on two individuals, undoubtedly by David Grush, who knows of approximately 40 whistleblowers or potential whistleblowers or witnesses, both hostile or cooperative, who know about the UFO reverse engineering programs. And so he, I think, told Congressman Burleson some names of two of these people, and the congressman reached out to these two people and then received a warning not to talk to them. And the warning was serious enough that he has put out a message saying that he is not suicidal. So if all of a sudden he's eliminated and they try to make it look like suicide, I think the message coming from him here is that no, it would not be suicide at all. This was a straight out murder, elimination. Okay, so here is a new trailer for S4, the Bob Lazar story. So that's going to be released on April 3rd. So we're talking about in 2 weeks' time. It goes for a couple of minutes. So I'm not going to play the whole thing. Let me just play the opening scenes.
That evidence was in the custody of the United States government. Between December of 1988 and April of 1989, I worked as a senior staff physicist in what has to be the most secret project in history. My job in this program was to be part of a back engineering team.
Okay, so that's the trailer for the coming documentary on the Bob Lazar story. So that's coming out in a couple of weeks. Now, the thing that I really wanted to discuss here was that I think the Bob Lazar story is based on his accurate retelling of genuine experiences he had at S4 or Area 51 or the Papoose Lake area that's part of Area 51. And it has to be pointed out that by 1988, which is the year Bob Lazar worked for a short period at S4, and he came out in early 1989, US corporations had already successfully reverse engineered retrieved flying saucer technologies. So this is contrary to what he concluded about reverse engineering efforts based on what he saw at S4. So while he was at S4, he was told to work on this reverse engineering project, and that he was trying to understand the propulsion system of the flying saucers that he was working on. And he talked about the exotic matter, element 115, which I believe is now called moscovium, that was deemed to be necessary for this craft to be able to operate. And so he was working on that project and came away from it all saying that, well, the reverse engineering that he saw at the S4 facility was very unsuccessful and kind of like very poorly planned and funded, and that they had suffered many setbacks. Now this is a real kind of issue, because others have come forward and talked about successful reverse engineering. So how can it be that in 1988, Bob Lazar goes to S4, sees a flying saucer craft, is told to work on it to understand the reverse engineering, and he reads briefing documents, cooperates with some other scientists that are based there, and eventually concludes that the reverse engineering happening at S4 is very unsuccessful, has been unsuccessful till the time he showed up, and looked as though it would continue to be unsuccessful for the near future. But yet we're told by other witnesses who have come forward, for example, Brad Sorensen was a patent illustrator who went to Norton Air Force Base and then was taken to Edwards Air Force Base in 1988, the same year as Lazar had his experience, and says that he saw 3 flying saucer craft, different sizes, different models, being shown at an air show, and clearly people were coming and looking at these craft and putting in orders for them to be built for their organizations, whether we're talking the CIA, the National Reconnaissance Office, or Air Force Space Command, or whoever was interested in these flying saucers could make orders. And the story goes that these craft, there were 3 different sizes, were being built by corporations, and that Lockheed Martin was mentioned. Now, Ben Rich, the Lockheed's Skunk Works CEO, also said in a 1993 lecture, so that's just 5 years after Lazar, or 4 years after Lazar came forward, also said that the flying saucers had been built and that they could take ET home. So he is also alluding to the fact that the retrieved UFOs that Lockheed had got its hands on had been successfully reverse engineered. And then you have people like William Tompkins, who revealed that in the early 1980s, the Navy's Solar Warden program was launched, and that they had these space carriers. So I think the conclusion that emerges is that what Bob Lazar was shown was really part of some kind of disinformation campaign to really direct researchers, members of Congress, the general public, away from the truth about secret space programs that were already taking off in the 1980s. And so to really misdirect people from the truth of these, they got Bob Lazar to come forward and say that, well, I worked on the flying saucer at the S4 facility, and there was no success in reverse engineering that technology. It's too difficult. People don't understand how to make stable element 115 or moscovium. And so all of that, I think we can conclude, was a misdirection, that Lazar unwittingly was part of a disinformation program. And that's not to take away from Lazar as someone who was exposed to some pretty impressive and some powerful experiences concerning flying saucers, It's just to put it in the context that what he was shown, I think, was part of an agenda to shape the general public to believe that, yes, we've recovered flying saucers, but they have not been successfully reverse engineered. Okay, so here is a update Jorge Pabon, or JP, did on his YouTube channel, where he discussed an update we did back in September 2023. That was update 24, where he described an unknown underground location where he was part of a 10-man mission that encountered a 12-foot giant in a stasis chamber. So he described in that mission how he was part of a 10-man team from the US, and they went through a portal to this unknown underground location. They saw advanced technology, they saw other portals, and they saw two other teams come in, one team from Brazil and another 10-man team from Africa showed up in this underground location, and they looked at this giant, this 12-foot red-haired giant. And JP described the disturbance, and that the teams left because they thought that disturbance would be dangerous. And when they came back, the 12-foot giant that had been in the stasis chamber was gone. Apparently he had woken up and somehow been awakened. So this is, I think, a very significant given what we know about Iran actually being a very ancient civilization, or its history going back into the distant past, and that there have been reports that the conflict in Iran really isn't so much about nuclear weapons and oil, but it's more to do about these giant portals, or these giants and these portals that have been found in various places of Iran, and that the deep state, operating through its Iranian proxies, was activating these for some very dangerous purposes. And so the US intervened along with Israel to basically stop that and to get control themselves of whatever underground locations in Iran where these giants and these portals are being studied. So that's very, very significant, I think, as a exopolitical explanation for the current Iran war. Because if you look at a lot of the geopolitical analyses that are out there, they're all focusing on the oil factor, they're focusing on the nuclear weapons factor, they're focusing on Iran's connection to international terrorism, and saying that, well, these to varying degrees were used as a pretext or justification for beginning the bombing campaign of Iran, which may be a prelude to a ground invasion of Iran, or special forces have already gone in. But what we now get from this kind of like exopolitical factor is that there's another explanation for why the war began in Iran, and that right now the US, Israel are looking or trying to get control of underground locations in Iran that presumably are where these portals and giants have been discovered. Okay, so here is a interview that I did with James Gilliland and Peter Maxwell Slattery, where we discussed a range of topics concerning stargates, UFO fleets, the Great Reveal, and what you're not being told. And so we discussed a range of topics concerning extraterrestrials really going that extra mile now in revealing themselves. Both James and Peter have recorded hundreds or thousands of UFOs that have appeared over their properties. They've been part of contact initiatives with different extraterrestrial groups, communications, getting people ready for extraterrestrial contact. And so we talked a little bit also about the stargates, the portals, and of course, what's going on in Iran. So definitely well worth listening to that interview to get another perspective, an exopolitical perspective on what's happening around the planet today. So here is a very interesting infographic from the US Space Force. So the link is there on my website, and you can see this infographic. It's quite complex. It shows different deltas or different elements of Space Force and what they are involved in. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is that this is a very complex infographic. And that's very interesting that a new military service such as Space Force, which presumably at the moment doesn't have any combat capabilities in space other than maybe some satellites that are equipped with some kind of weapon that can hunt and kill other satellites, and this kind of mini space shuttle that has been sent up into Earth orbit for some time. That other than those, the Space Force doesn't have any real combat capability, but yet you have this complex infographic showing the different deltas or the different commands, units, including space combat in Space Force. So what's really going on? Well, this is where I think we need to start talking about the flying triangles, the flying rectangles that were photographed in 2017 by JP at MacDill Air Force Base. And so at the time, we distributed those photos, and we got people to kind of like pay attention to what JP was being told about the covert space program operating out of MacDill. And he was being encouraged to take photos of this because clearly there were people in Air Force Space Command, which today is known as Space Force, that wanted the truth to come out, that they want the general public to know about these really advanced technologies that were being used by US Space Command, or US Air Force Space Command, Space Force today. And so I think that is very relevant to this infographic. But of course, the general public isn't making that connection between what Space Force has in space in terms of covert space capabilities or combat craft, such as flying triangles, flying rectangles that use some kind of anti-gravity technology. Instead, they're focusing on satellites and the rocket launchers using Dragon 9 out of places like Vandenberg Air Force Base or Space Force Base, I think they might call that now. Okay, so here is, I think, a very significant development. This is the Executive Office of the President, that's President Trump, has registered two domains, Alien.gov and Aliens.gov. And that is being seen as a quiet but unmistakable step toward a potential public portal for declassified materials on unidentified anomalous phenomena. So this is, I think, a very, very significant development that we know that President Trump has promised to release UFO files, and he's commanded Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, to release those. And Hegseth has said he's in the process of doing just that. And I think what they're going to do is they're going to release those files not on the website of AARO, which has really discredited itself. The AARO stands for All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which was a UFO study group set up in the Pentagon that was at first directed by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, and has a new director, but rather than helping whistleblowers come forward, the Arrow office has really been a hindrance to whistleblowers coming forward to reveal what they know. So this website, or these websites, Aliens.gov or Alien.gov, that is going to, I think, basically sidestep the Arrow office and the website that Arrow set up and release these files directly, and it's going to be under the control of the executive branch. In other words, the executive office of the president will be in control of this rather than the Pentagon, which is the current situation with the Arrow office. Okay, so that's very interesting, the registration of Aliens.gov. All right, so here is a tweet that refers to a summary of ex-posts on a Twitter feed associated with General Neil McCaslin, who we talked about before, and that he mentions major aerospace companies working on UFO research and development, hiring hitmen to enforce secrecy. And so in this post, he talks about a missing general or a murdered general, and also talks about the role of major aerospace corporations in murdering whistleblowers. So here he talks about a General Rossi's murder and how that connects to various issues concerning nuclear weapons. And here he talks about corporations hiring hitmen to intimidate engineers and technicians who are working on various projects. And of course, that also relates to the UFO issue. So it's quite explosive material. So there are 7 claims that he makes here, and one of them actually concerns flying saucers that were developed by the Germans. So this is something well worth taking a look at, that he's blowing the whistle here on his X feed, or a feed that was associated with him, on murdered generals, Nazi flying saucers, on the use of hitmen to silence whistleblowers, technicians, scientists talking about UFOs. So very, very significant. So well worth taking a look at these 7 major points, or 7 claims made by General McCaslin as found on this website that's linked to him. Okay, so here is a update I did with JP, where we met up at Daytona Beach and we talked about recent world events such as the giants and portals being a factor in the Iran war. So we went into a little more detail into what it is that is happening around the world and how the Iran war may be related to the effort to learn about portals and giants in Iran, that this is a very ancient land and that the people have a consciousness, they have a kind of like a civilizational memory that goes back thousands of years. So this is the important thing to know about Iran, that these technologies are probably being activated at the moment because as UFO disclosure moves forward, the general public and the global consciousness rises, more people become aware of UFOs, and the UFO issue in places like Iran that do have these this ancient history, that they start to rise. So with the Iranians or the Persians, I mean more correctly, they have ancestral memories of not just UFOs but also of giants, portals and other ancient technologies that were at one time used widely in that region. And so JP and I talk about Iran, portals and giants. We talk about the office of the president registering this Aliens.gov website and what that means. We talk about the Vatican's role in UFO disclosure. So it's a short update, 10 minutes, but definitely well worth it. And one thing we also discuss is the coming webinar on April 18. Because of my illness, I had to delay this webinar that was going to be held earlier in the year. But I'm thankfully feeling a lot better, sleeping much better, cough is gone, or virtually gone. So now I'm ready to resume webinars. I still, as I've mentioned in the past, I will have to undergo surgery at some point in the next month or two. But until then, I'm feeling recovered enough to be able to not only do these weeks in reviews, but also start doing webinars again. So the first webinar we're going to do is going to be this April 18 webinar with JP and also Gene Decode and myself, where we're going to go over the Exopolitics state of the planet. And so you could go to exopolitics.org to get that banner, or to learn more about it and to register. Patreon members, Solar Patron and Galactic patrons will they have special deals so that they can watch it, and I'll be making an announcement soon to those so that they can watch that webinar. But if you're a member of the general public and you're not a Patreon member, then you can register directly through Crowdcast and just go to exopolitics.org. So, I want to thank all my Patreon members for their patience, and I'm very glad that we can start moving forward with webinars again. Thank you for your support, very much appreciated. And so that's it for today. I look forward to doing this again with you in another week. So thank you and aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.